What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mind Something. If you're new here, my name is Jake, and today I sit down with the co founder of Telestai AI and we talk about how they're attempting to decentralize social media. This is a somewhat new GPU mineable coin, and I like some of the things that they're attempting to do, but I just want to remind you I do not accept any type of compensation for these types of interviews. This is just a conversation to bring awareness to the project, and we're going to do a lot more like this in the near future. So do me a favor, hit that like button and hopefully the subscribe button, and let's get to it. All right. So please help me welcome Chief, who is one of the co founders of an excellent new project I find very interesting, which is Telestai. And he's here today to tell us all about the project. But before we get into all those details, I'd really like to know a little bit more about you, Chief. So if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got started with crypto.
Yeah, thanks. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. My entry into crypto sort of happened in and around, I think it was 2021, when my brother encouraged me to buy some Dogecoin, and I actually saw it go up and down, and it was a really interesting kind of little wave of movement. But at the time when he encouraged me to do it, I was really curious as to where the coins came from. And I found myself doing a lot more research on the coins, the emission, mining, things of that nature. I really like the idea of producing your own coin and becoming a custodian of the network itself with what the emission is. So I ended up buying a heap of GPUs in bull run, which is generally speaking never the best time to buy them, but we bought a stack of them, especially when Nvidia was restricting the what do you call it, the amount of GPUs that you could purchase through retailers. So we actually bought about 30 GPUs. Myself, I bought about 30 GPUs and started mining quite a number of different coins, and have sort of been in the mining community since. Have dabbled in a couple of different projects, and probably around 2023. I think it was November. I started to have the idea of Telestai and what it would mean, and that was sort of touching in on some of the cultural points at that moment, and started to write. I wrote what was called the white paper. SOT has called it the manifesto, which I quite liked and have adopted since. And in the process of doing that, have worked with a couple of different devs before sort of sitting in much more firmly with Zach, who I consider the other co-founder of the coin. He and I worked on launching that in August. So the first block was mined the 25th of July, but it went live on the old coin miners pool on I think it was the 2nd of August. But so that's kind of a little bit about my crypto background. My day to day, I'm in business in Sydney, so I'm a contractor that works for a couple of different businesses, and like to think of myself as reasonably accomplished and have some business smarts, and but I see a huge future in crypto, and I see a lot of people, I think, beginning to ask questions of how do we do certain things, and realizing that blockchain can answer those questions. So that's why I'm excited about the future of it.
Awesome. Well, one of the missions that you guys are trying to accomplish is kind of near and dear to my heart, being a content creator. I think we'll get a little bit further into detail here in a moment, but tell me a little bit more about your background, like your passions, and obviously, the story behind what brought you to crypto, but what was your aha moment where it was like, okay, I have to be involved in this because XYZ?
I think the aha moment, ironically, was when I began to see the impact of some of the censorship that was occurring on different social media platforms. That was the one point where I'd sort of been seeing that occur, but in about November, I really thought there's something that is wrong with the way that speech is being allowed to be perpetuated and spread. I also, I mean, as you've probably seen on different platforms, you can't say certain words. Those words will get you censored and will get your video flagged, and I have found that to be quite weird and strange, because the reality is the words themselves aren't the problem. The problem is what people do with it, which you shouldn't really be responsible for when you're a content creator. What I also noticed as well, which was something that I found very discouraging, was content creators like yourself have, generally speaking, quite large followings. So you have a number of subscribers, you have a lot of people who are interested in what you have to say, which is great. So you build content to curate to your audience. What I realized is that your content creation actually does not earn you a lot of money on the actual channel itself. And in fact, most of the money that you receive is either through third party sponsorships or otherwise. But that was really discouraging for me because I personally believe that as a culture or as a society, we as humans are storytellers. And in fact, the people who are doing a lot of the storytelling are the ones that really we should have their voices much more prevalent. Slight segue is I have obviously all the streaming channels, and I barely can find anything that's worth watching these days because the perpetuation of stories these days is all around entertainment and fitting a political ideology or an agenda, and that kind of ruins things really. It just doesn't have the right stories come out. So hearing about that, hearing what you guys are doing, and the fact that you guys don't get remunerated very well was inspiring to me, because I personally believe that we should be fostering voices like yourself and others to produce more content, because I think you've got valuable things to say. So why shouldn't you get paid?
Appreciate it. And I think everybody has a contribution to share, but certainly people will get discouraged when they feel like their opinion is going to get muted or censored, right? And we've got to have more avenues. And that's one of the reasons why it was so important for me to have you guys on the channel to talk about stuff like this, because, I feel like we've kind of turned a page. The inauguration's in a couple of days, and perhaps we won't see this widespread censorship epidemic that we've had in the past, but who's to say that it won't come back? And we got to have tools to be able to overcome some of the challenges that we've been faced previously. And this is certainly one of them. So I want to shed light on that. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of Telestai and how it works.
So the basis of what we're trying to build is an ecosystem. So within that ecosystem, there'll be several different platforms or solutions to various problems that we're sort of looking at. So Telestai itself is the mainnet, which is GPU mineable, utilizing the Meraki algorithm. So that ecosystem then has within it a couple of different platforms that we are quite passionate about. The first is one that we've called Lasco, which I can explain the name of. But Lasco is effectively like our social media platform. It will be moderated by AI with some community involvement as well, and it will be sort of free to be joined by anyone in the sense of there's no stopping you from actually jumping on the platform. There will be a couple of levels of basically ways to keep bots off and things like that, and utilizing TLS to do that, but we're kind of in the process of constructing that at the moment. But what we wanted Lasco to be is a place where content creators can upload and store their content, and then if they so choose, they can actually create a commercial element to the purchasing of their content. So think a little bit like Patreon, but the difference is you'll be paying in TLS for that content, and most significantly, the team, Telestai, the platform, will not be taking any percentage of royalty or fee from the content creator themselves. So whatever you charge and however you feel like you are able to sort of bill a customer for your content, you'll get the full benefit of that. So we don't take a cent. The second part of the ecosystem is what we've called Zeroa, which is, we like to explain it as a digital ID. Essentially, we're utilizing a TLS address to create user accounts. Zeroa at the moment can be used as like a plugin. So we've got like a Chrome extension that you can download, and that will allow seamless integration into the actual ecosystem. So there's a second version of that coming out very shortly, which will allow the logging in of users into Lasco without any problem at all. Now, it's really important to note that Zeroa is something that we're very passionate about from a privacy and from a how do we phrase it, security perspective. So Zeroa utilizes the BIP 39 security measures, so 12 seed phrase. That means that no one can access it except for you. So not your keys, not your data, not your keys, not your user. They're the types of things that we're passionate about. But additionally, what we're going to do is actually allow people to put in a little bit of metadata themselves if they wish. And if they wanted to, they can actually look to record what they view and record what they're actually utilizing in order to then sell it on to advertisers, which is where the third part of our ecosystem comes in, which is called Mercatus. Now, Mercatus is a portal for advertisers to purchase the metadata of users that are in the Telestai ecosystem. Zero will track, if you choose to, where you're viewing, what you're consuming, what you're purchasing, and basically craft that into a digital ID, essentially a digital fingerprint of where you've been. Advertisers will be able to buy that data off the users, and you'll basically, as a user, get a fractional reward for all the utilization of the services that you've used, essentially. Now that will go obviously across all streaming, all surfing. So wherever you browse on the web, it will actually track that as well. So it's not limited to the Telestai ecosystem, but the funding will come straight back into the Telestai ecosystem in as much as advertisers will pay you in TLS. So our thought behind that is users have been scraped for data for years and are the product on social media platforms. We're going to flip that paradigm and give users the chance to, if they want to, buy into it, sell the data themselves and actually make profit off their own browsing habits. We feel that's really important to acknowledge and identify.
Interesting. So there's been a lot of projects that have similar mechanisms, but in some cases they'll choose to opt for a different payout. I think, for example, Chlor initially started with Bitcoin payouts. Some others will offer USDT, USDC. You guys are going to stick with the native coin, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So our ambition is to make it exclusive TLS. We believe that it creates value in the ecosystem, and we believe that it, as a mainnet, is fast, easily used, and will achieve the goal that we want.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about proof of work because, you know, there's a lot of different options, right? When you're launching a coin, you can be a token, you can be a layer one, you can go proof of work, you can go proof of stake. There's other consensus mechanisms out there, but in your specific case, obviously you had experience as a miner, but I would guess that there may have been some hesitation depending on, you know, the tokenomics and things like that and how all of this would work. But what made you guys sure that you wanted to launch as a proof of work coin?
Primarily because we believe that miners create community within the ecosystem itself, so they become the bedrock. Secondly, we believe that the most secure means of blockchain is proof of work. So there were really two reasons. One, we believe in the idea that miners are a community and the bedrock to any project that can be birthed. And secondly, we believe that proof of work is the most secure means of keeping the blockchain up and running. And I suppose segue again to that, we've sort of seen a lot of projects which have the mining community as the bedrock, and those projects are huge successes. So I reference Bitcoin, I reference Flux, I reference Casper, all communities where crypto mining is at the bedrock of what they do, and people participating in the actual consensus of the chain then leads to utilization of that chain as the miners themselves utilize what is on offer.
Would you say that there was a trade-off to stay with proof of work as far as the amount of development and the time that's invested into the blockchain as opposed to proof of stake? Could it have been easier to choose a different option?
I think you get different code bases and you get different advantages and benefits. That's something that's definitely true. I think you always got a cost benefit to choosing a specific blockchain with the inherent code that's on that. What I will say though is I think that there's nothing that you can do on our code base that is inferior to other code bases from a proof of stake perspective. I realize that that's a fairly outlandish statement, but the reason why I say that is because I think a lot of the time programmers move into different ecosystems based off where they want to be and based off what they want to code. And the development of those ecosystems is generally based off the money that they can make out of it. So they originally went into ETH because that was where quite a lot of VC capital was being put, and so they would get funding from there. They're moving into Solana because the same things are happening there. So a lot of the coding groups, I would say, move around to where external funding is available and can be found. And they see it more as a opportunity to get paid. What I see with what we're trying to do is basically taking the existing code base and continuing to develop it with a legacy in mind. That's sort of why we believe that we can do anything that we need on our code base that you could do on any other chain.
Okay. And as far as development goes and the ease of use and the challenges that you guys have faced, can you tell us a little bit about the team behind Telestai AI? And can you also tell us a little bit about some of the things that have been most challenging for you so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So the team itself is starting to grow a little bit. We have Zach, who is the lead dev. So he has kind of attracted a number of different people into the project, which is wonderful. So we've got two other devs that sort of sit with him, Asic and Warrior, in different locations, and they're working primarily on the Lasco and Zeroa and Mercatus platforms. We have IT4F, who's a legacy blockchain OG who's been around the traps quite a number of times. Fantastic guy and knows a lot of stuff. He's actually been working on or will continue to work on our core offering, so the actual mainnet itself. Then we have Topper, who, as far as I know, could potentially be Satoshi, given how clever his privacy approaches have been. We've never heard his voice and we've never seen his face. He's a fairly cheeky guy. But he's working on something at the moment called Telestai CB, or the Creators Bubble, as we call it, which is a Tails-based operating system that will ensure that anyone can access the Telestai ecosystem so long as they have an internet connection. So it will be the censorship resistance that we are seeking. So that's the coding team that we've got at the moment. We've got a couple of community coordinators or members who take care of the community. So SAS, Light, and Turkish are the three guys who sort of are there. We've got a couple of volunteers as well who take a greater interest and are miners that wanted to be a little bit more involved, but potentially don't have as much time, which is wonderful. And then the final guys that we've got is a gentleman called Chad, who's from Rhubarb Media. So he handles the marketing for us and has actually just stepped up into a slightly larger remit of content creation and things like that, which is fantastic. So that's the team as it stands at the moment. We recently had Dan Keller step in as an angel investor, which is really wonderful. He loves what we're doing in the project and has decided to invest in what we're attempting to achieve, which gives us the chance to actually not worry so much about market and pricing and focus instead on coding and building and managing the project itself, which is a great assurance to us that we're on the right track.
Awesome. Now, there are a lot of mouths to feed, and that brings me to the next subject, which is going to be the dev fee.
Yep.
There is some hesitation to some of the pools to implement the blockchain simply because the dev fee is 25%. Now, I think most people, when they look at tokenomics and they see anything that's over 5 or 10% for the team, they immediately just, have negative connotations that come with that. But one of the things that I've noticed is the transparency that comes with that dev fee. I personally have not seen anybody go through as much trouble as you guys have to make sure that everybody can clearly see all of the transactions that happen in that dev fund, when money's going in, when money's coming out. And if you could just tell us a little bit about why the dev fee is what it is and what you guys plan on doing with it.
Yeah, look, I guess the best way to explain that is, unfortunately, the reality is projects need cash to survive. And in fact, the projects that don't have some stream of income to pay for, required marketing or required work to be done on the chain itself end up kind of withering and dying. I won't mention projects that I've seen that happen because I don't think it's fair to reference them. But the reality is you need an income unless you are someone who's VC funded. Now, given that we are a decentralized project that is looking to keep social media decentralized, the best way that we thought we could straddle that was by having an open and transparent dev wallet. All the transactions are logged and can be seen. You can actually look at where the funding actually goes. I personally invested a fair bit of money in starting it up because obviously that was required. But since then, the project has been essentially self-funding and able to be utilize what we've got to actually pay the devs the required amount for the work that they're being for the work that they're actually doing. Now, everyone will look at that and go, yeah, but that if you look at Bitcoin has no dev fee. There's projects like Litecoin that don't have dev fees, etc. I would say that they're the exceptions that prove the rule, because if you look at almost every other successful project in the ecosystem, there is some form of either dev fee or significant venture fund capital that's gone into it. I'd reference Ethereum, which the ICO on that was, or the initial pre-mine, on that was somewhere between 60 and 65%, which is a bit of a dirty secret that people don't discuss too much. As a GPU miner, I mined a lot of Ethereum, and well, not enough clearly, but I mined Ethereum, so I'm aware of that fact, and I bought into the concept that funding was used to build out the ecosystem. And when you look at them from a project point of view, there's Bitcoin, then there's them, and that reality is pretty, I think, pretty much validates that you need some form of funding. Now, what we are trying to do is be as transparent as possible with what we do with it. I'm not here to dump on the exchanges or dump on the community. One, I've put my face to it. Two, I've put my name and my livelihood on it at some level. That would be probably the stupidest thing that I could do, would be to destroy a project like that. But more importantly, I believe in the project and I believe in what we're actually trying to do, and I want to see it succeed. So the dev fund is there to basically propel us forward. We will have things like bug bounties, and we will have things like not giveaways, but incentivizing users to come along on the journey with us. We will be setting up an ambassador program. All that funding comes from the dev wallet. So rather than miners being forced to donate to the project and give up more of what they've got, we're actually saying, look, we'll take a portion and we'll put that to the use of the project. And almost in a sense, it's the miners receiving certainty that we're actually going to invest back into the project rather than just let it fizzle. So that's something that we're really passionate about doing.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight the distinction between venture capitalist funding and a dev fee. And if people out there really don't understand the difference between that, it's pretty simple. When you have investors, putting into a project, the expectation of profit is there, and they will absolutely sell their coins to A, recoup their investment, but B, they're also hoping for future price appreciation, but they're going to get easily shaken out if they lose any kind of faith in the project. Whereas the team itself, they got to dig down and they got to work harder to make sure that the project is successful. So my preference obviously would be to have a dev fee that's larger than what VCs have put in. But it's a crapshoot. We never know what we're going to get with a project, and I think it's important that projects come out into the open, into the public, and have discussions like this so people understand what they're really getting into.
Oh, 100%. And I'm very transparent with it. I'm more than happy to sit down and show the cost of things. I'm more than happy to sit down and explain where the cash is actually going. One of the things about crypto that I have learned is it is pay to play in many senses. Listings are not free. Mining pools are not free. A lot of the people that run these things as well have their own costs associated with it. So it is an economy at some level. Unless you are a massive, high net worth individual that is just going to pump a whole lot of money into a project with a promise that it will be successful. Projects need some level of ability to self-fund themselves, or they will die. And I genuinely believe that. And there are examples where I've seen that happen. And that's not nice, right? Because you want all projects to succeed. And unfortunately, there are some practical realities that people need to pay for stuff. So
For sure.
Yeah, we're just looking to make that as sensible as possible.
I do talk to a lot of different project developers, leaders that have kind of got to peek behind the curtain, so to speak, when it comes to dealing with exchanges and getting listed. Could you perhaps enlighten the audience on some of the challenges that comes with that and what you guys are doing to address any challenges that come up?
That's a great question. I won't name exchanges because they all do very similar things by and large and in general. There are some exceptions. Again, I won't mention them because I think it's just fair to deal with it as a topic. But reality is to get a listing on a general exchange, someone in the top, let's say 150, most likely between that 100 to 30 mark, you're looking at spending anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 US just for the listing of the actual coin itself. If you're a mainnet, that does end up requiring you to probably pay an additional fee to get the integration of your code into their system. So that's an additional fee. Then there's something called market making, which they generally speaking want you to supply. That market making is a liquidity amount, so it's anywhere between 5 and 15,000 on um, either side of the pair. So that's in the native coin and in USDT or USDC, whichever they prefer. That reality is one that you can't escape. This is what all projects are battling against. There are some smaller exchanges who operate a little bit differently and do have different requirements, which is great, and they're generally where entry projects go or projects go to enter into exchanges. But the truth is, if you're when people say when Binance, it's like, dude, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that reality, I think, is unfortunately lost on a few people who don't have that background knowledge, and reasonably so, right? Not everyone's running these things, so it's a little bit hard to know what's what, but that's the truth of it. So I think this is where people go, oh, why do you have a dev fee? It's like, it's for things like this. It's so that the community doesn't have to put their hand in the pocket to list on an exchange. We take that worry away from them, and we want to actually make sure that the money that we're spending is done in a sensible way. I've seen community projects spend months trying to raise for exchanges, and it's tough. It's tough for them to do it because these exchanges charge a lot, and then you got to make sure that it's not an illegitimate employee who potentially could go rogue. I've seen a few instances of that happen, which is devastating to the community. But that's the reality of the crypto game. You know, I haven't met a pool operator that operates at a more than break even, and if they're at break even, they're doing well.
Yep.
They sacrifice a lot to keep their pool up and running, and I hats off to them for what they do.
Yeah, I would liken it very similarly to mining at residential rates. Like you said, they're lucky if they get above break even, and a lot of this is just speculation, and they are going to implement the coins that they think will potentially do well. And sometimes that doesn't always work out in their favor. In fact, many times it does not, and it takes a big leap of faith. So, all the pool operators that are out there that potentially listen to this, you have my respect, that's for sure. But there are also malicious actors, right? And not only do you have to worry about that on the pool side, but you also have to worry about it on the exchange side. We've heard horror stories about, let's say, for instance, Sam Bankman-Fried and them being able to create, monopoly money, so to speak, off of a coin's back end, and the emissions just mean nothing at that point whenever they're pushing liquidity into these places that of coins that don't truly exist. So there's a lot of pitfalls, and it's a lot that's resting on y'all's shoulders to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Can you
Yeah,
tell us? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I absolutely agree with what you said. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about where we are in the development and the roadmap, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. We have, I would say, we have the proof of concepts of Lasco, Zeroa, and Mercatus up and running. So they're currently able to be played with and worked and understood. And in fact, we'd encourage anyone who has any interest in the project to jump into the Discord and just to try out what we've got running and give us some feedback on what you think is good or bad, because Zach and the team are very interested in hearing what we can improve on. Within the next month, we will be releasing Telestai CB. So we've got some confirmation from Topper that he's through most of the work that he requires to get that done, which is an enormous accomplishment for him and for the project. So we're really grateful for what he's actually done. Lasco and Zeroa are undergoing a revamp, in the sense of we've taken feedback that we've currently got and we're working towards improving them for a next release. So the V2 of Zeroa, I've seen a sort of a quick look through, and it looks fantastic. So aesthetically, it's really pushed forward, which is wonderful. But more importantly, the features that we will be implementing with that will be really, really clever and break down some of those barriers to entry. Lasco itself is undergoing some work on the infrastructure opportunities that exist behind it, and we'll probably be looking at releasing sort of a V3 or a V4 probably in the next, I would say, month is probably where we're looking, and that release will start to shape more towards where our kind of goal to be is going to be. The stages after that will be we'll be looking at then integrating Flux into that back end. So one of the reasons that we partnered with Flux is we wanted to give we wanted to be true to the idea of true decentralization. So what will happen is users, if they wish to produce long form content in video, will be able to essentially plug in a Flux storage mechanism into their backend and then upload their videos, a little bit like Google Drive or what have you, and then stream to their audiences accordingly. That's probably the next big progress that will happen after the next update. So that's something that we're actively looking into. We're also starting to look into the looking into the subscription element. So there's some work that IT4F has been engaging with to conceptually resolve the challenge of what will we need to do to get subscriptions up and running without, and as integrated into the daemon as possible. So that's something that we need to look at. And then from there, Mercatus will probably then have another look at Paint and a little bit of work done to it. What has also happened to the side is we've had what we call the dashboard, or app.telestai.io, we think is what we'll call it, which is essentially going to be like an entry portal. So you'll log into this particular area and it'll have all of the ecosystem available for you. And as you log into Zeroa, everything becomes basically one click. You're logged in and it's done. That's sort of where we're looking at next. So they're the things that we've been working on fairly, robustly. Obviously, holidays is a thing. Everyone does need time off, and the team from August through to, I'm going to say, mid-December were absolutely powering through a huge amount of development. If you go and have a look at our GitHub, it's lit up like a Christmas tree. And then obviously over that Christmas period, it's like, guys, go touch some grass and take some time off and power down a little bit because you need to, and recuperate, spend some time with your family, and now they're kind of back at it, which is great. So we have a huge amount of work in that sense coming.
Awesome. So we not only will have some type of platform, and I hate to use YouTube as an example, but for content creators out there that are interested in getting involved in this, currently you basically have a back end. You're trying to create, we'll call it an ID, and they have their own login to this system. And we have visuals, we have text, but as far as video is concerned, that's something that's still around the corner. Obviously, you probably can't give an exact ETA, but what kind of expectations do you want to set around that?
Look, we'd love to have something in test and at least working from a behind the scenes perspective. I would say by March. There's some Docker work that we need to do in terms of looking into that and working through it to make sure that we can integrate correctly with the Flux ecosystem. But that's sort of when we would like to be touching into that area. So, I mean, Zach might kill me, but I would love to be able to say that we could have our first video up and running before the end of quarter 2 this year. Even if it's as a preliminary view, just to make sure that we can, start playing around with people uploading videos. It brings its own level of complexity because obviously bandwidth then becomes, the thing that we got to worry about. But I think that's something that we can resolve, with the right amount of, insight and thinking.
I love the fact that you guys have gone with Flux on the back end for true decentralization. But I'm sure it has its own unique challenges, right? You probably could have launched on AWS, deployed very easily, but having Dak and other team members from Flux kind of walk you through the integration, how has that been going so far? Is there anything specifically that's given you guys a challenge, or has it been better than you anticipated?
Oh, look, I think from an integration point of view, it's been really seamless. So we've been playing around with the bits at the back end. The porting of it all in is really the bit that we need to kind of work through the most of it. Like, how do we interact with those two pieces? Particularly with payment for the actual Flux services, because that will have to be done in the native Flux, which is totally fine. We just want to make sure that we actually make it seamless for the content creator. That's the bit that they don't tell you with all this stuff is you can create a great solution, but actually making it easy and simple to use is actually that's the science in all this. Like, that's actually really tough. So there's like hours and hours and hours of thought that goes into what if we did this, what if we did this. So when people think of YouTube and they just upload a video, that all of that is a thought process, and rightly so. It's about taking what's in your brain of what can we do, and then molding technology around that as a solution. So that's been, I think, the hardest part is the architecture of how does it all look when we put it together. The tech itself, I think, in general, the team has been grappling with it fairly easily. The documentation on their side is really good. So
It reminds me, I watched a video recently that talked about how great design is never seen. It's just
Mm.
so intuitive that it's not like you're going to go around praising it about because of these specific aspects. It just does what it's supposed to do. And from that perspective, when it comes to the visualization, the user interface with the platform, it might be easy to copy and paste, but then you're going to have people that want to push back on that and say that it has to be unique. We have to put our little stamp on it. It has to be different in this aspect. But then you have to worry about how people interact with it. And I would agree that probably the most important feature of all of that would simply be how easy is it to use. And for that reason, are you guys leaning towards kind of replicating things that you've seen before, or are you going to build from scratch in that aspect?
I think at some level we're a blend. So we're probably at this point a blend of YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter in that sense. So that's kind of how we're coming out of it. Um, that doesn't mean it won't change in the future, but that's sort of just where we've landed at this present time. I think the thing for me is I'm not ashamed to say, like, that works, so why not just use it? I think a lot of time people get trapped in the it must be new and different. Um, I don't think Satoshi was like that. Satoshi solved the problem, absolutely, and he joined a whole bunch of ideas, concepts, and work that's already been done into one solution. And if anything, I'm trying to channel that sort of pragmatism of the tech is here, the tech is absolutely there, to do what we're trying to do. We don't need to invent the wheel. What we need to do is shape the wheel to then fit on a carriage, if that makes sense. We want to use what's present to actually achieve a goal. That's the main thing that we believe needs to be done. And if I'm being honest with you, I think that's where a lot of projects do end up going, a bit awry. Is they focus on the tech and they forget about the application, and that part I think is really critical.
Absolutely. I did want to spend a little bit more time before we wrap up on the mining aspect of it, right? This is a mining centric channel, and people want to know things like the tokenomics. They want to know more about the algorithm. They want to know more about the nodes. So if you could just kind of tell us, we'll start there. Let's start with tokenomics. What kind of tokenomic schedule are we looking at?
So we have a full supply of 1.9 billion. Each block is 468 as a reward. The miner gets 75% of that, so roughly equates to 351. Each block is a minute long. So we do follow a very similar schedule to the Raven coin, which is our big brother to some extent from a coding point of view. But we took what Ravencoin were doing and have manipulated it from an algorithm point of view. So we took the prog power algorithm and dialed certain things up and down. And the reason for that is I believe that there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of GPU miners who have shut down because there's nothing quite profitable for them, or hasn't got ASICs on them, and makes it difficult for them to actually mine a reward. So what we did is we actually fiddled with it quite a lot to make it resemble the parameters of Ethereum, but still retain the ASIC resistance. We know that there are a lot of miners who basically would set and forget on Ethereum, and it would, all the power usage, everything was constructed from a rig perspective in that vein. We believe that those people will be interested in what we're doing because we want to build a chain that gives them that opportunity to turn back on without too much of a challenge. So that's sort of the basis of the algorithm itself. It is lighter weight than most prog power variants, quite significantly so. Is it as lightweight as Casper or Daghash? No, it's not, but that's okay. We retain some ASIC resistance on that, and we're happy with the medium that we found.
Okay. I don't know if you've heard this, but I'm hearing rumors that Bitmain is in talks with Ravencoin and creating a Kapow ASIC, which is ironic because it wasn't very long ago that I said something on a video about how not even Kapow was safe from ASICs, because show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, right? If there's enough price appreciation, if it's even slightly more efficient than a GPU, perhaps there's enough incentive there to create a specialized product for it. So in the event that you guys find out that there are FPGAs currently on the network, or there's an ASIC in development, or you're approached by an ASIC developer, how would you guys treat that particular situation?
That's a great question. I will say that from my understanding, there's already FGPAs already on Kapow. The efficiency just isn't as significant as people think. You can create specialized mining equipment on any algorithm. It doesn't matter what it is. You can do it. It's the cost and reward, whether it's worth actually doing, as you say. Where Bitmain are looking to exploit the opportunity is Kapow was originally tuned for 1 and 2 series. So it was very much ASIC resistant in that sense, because anything built around that time, the efficiency and effectiveness of what you would receive from a mining reward was only 2, maybe 3 times more advanced than a standard GPU. Thus, you'd need to produce quite a number of ASICs to actually, receive a decent reward for what you're actually doing. Now, that is also aside from the fact that specialized hardware equipment often can't transfer between projects, and given prog power is very much I like to think of prog power as a set of levers. You adjust the levers and you can get a different result. Those Kapow algos would be suited only to those Kapow ASICs would be suited only to Kapow algorithms. So Neox are, I think was Pepe Coin on it. I think Pepe Coin's on it. A couple of others. So Fyro, Evergrow, ourselves, we would not really be applicable to that particular ASIC. So you can't transfer between because we're different enough that it would make it difficult. Now, what we're actually looking at doing is I was sort of ghosting in some of the comments of that Bitmain discussion, and I Got a Girl and Mango both were talking about the algorithm itself, and I Got a Girl, who helped to code prog power, did say that there's some work that you can actually do to upweight the efficiency for 3, 4, and soon 5 series NVIDIAs, and indeed probably the same for AMDs. That tuning would then mean that a Bitmain ASICs, if they were to go onto the Kapow, would be again back at that 2, maybe 3 times efficiency gain. Whereas at the moment, if they were to do it, you're looking at 10, 12, something like that. So it does make it actually quite, there's a good reason for them to be looking at it, because from a revenue point of view, it makes sense. With that in mind, we've actually reached out to a girl and sort of talked to her and said, look, can we have a conversation around what would that tuning need to look like in order to protect our chain moving forward? And she's going to fill us in about some of the details of that. And we would actually look to tune where applicable to ensure that if specialized equipment was to come on, it's not so significant a gain that a GPU miner is pushed out, basically. So it's 2, maybe 3 times as more efficient. Now, some people might say, isn't that a cop-out? Shouldn't you just change the chain? Hard forks on any chain are very difficult to push through, especially when you've got a lot of pools and exchanges already on them. So there's a lot of management around that end. Secondly, any hard fork creates an opportunity for a break, and we don't want to necessarily try that just at the moment. And also, right now, as it is, any ASIC that is created will be 2, maybe 3 times more efficient anyway, because it's going to be a better chip than anything that's in a standard consumer grade hardware. So it's kind of like this. We think that this is the best result that we can get. We believe that we will remain predominantly ASIC resistant and not incentivize them to join our network, because our algo is got what it needs to keep them away. But it will be inevitable, I think, at some point that every chain will have some form of specialized equipment on them. What we're trying to do is just limit how much, because we want to preference the GPU miner as much as possible. If by any chance someone makes a whiz-bang ASIC that's 30 times more resistant, 30 times more efficient and completely blows Meraki out of the water, of course, at that point, we'd look at, forking and doing something from an algorithm point of view, because the whole point of being decentralized is to make sure that the person making the shovels isn't the one that has the majority of the share of the chain. That's what we want to avoid.
Now, this next question, I think I already know the answer to, but if I would have asked this question to Chlor, I would have assumed the answer, and I would have been wrong, so I'll just ask. Is there any future plans for implementing any other consensus mechanism in with the proof of work? So a hybrid model between proof of stake and proof of work?
None at all, and never will be, not while I'm involved.
All right. Glad to hear that. Okay. Well, for anybody out there that's watching right now, if you want to get in touch with Chief, or if you want to get involved with this project, Chief, if you would just kind of walk through those steps and how they would get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to jump onto the Telestai Twitter, it's Telestai_IO. Feel free to reach out to us on Discord as well. It's the Discord invite is in our Twitter handle as well, so you can grab that just there. We do have a smaller Telegram, which we're happy to share with you as well. So basically, just head to Twitter and you'll get the rundown of everything that's there. We have our website, which is telestai.io. That's probably also a great place to get all the information for our socials and what we're doing. If you want to mine, please jump into Discord and talk to us. We're happy to help you. Most people can set it up themselves already. So if you're comfortable as a miner, you'll probably work it out already. We are on Hive. I believe we're on MMPS as well. MMPOS, sorry. I don't know about any of the other softwares that are there. You can solo mine. We do have all the info that you can grab for that as well. And our mining pool stream does have a list of all the different pools that you can utilize. We would also just give a shout out to block miners who've just started up. Craig is a big supporter of the project and is someone who has helped us, so we just want to give him a shout out as well. I believe at the moment his pool has 0% fees as well for a period of 2 months, so it's a great way to kind of get introduced and learn a little bit more. And if you want to learn a little bit more about our profitability, jump onto What to Mine and Hashrate.no. We're on both of those. I don't think we're on the front page for What to Mine. We're in the GPU section. But from what I hear, Fred's looking at changing up the front page anyway. So with any luck, we'll hopefully be on the front as well.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Not a problem. Thank you, guys.
For those of you who stuck around till the end, I have some good news to share with you, and that is I plan on doing a lot more of these interviews, and the next project up on the list is Zealous. So be sure to hit that like and the subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next one.